Craving a dessert that's simply irresistible? Indulge in Brahms' Molten Lava Cake Sundae. Ripples of hot fudge layered on chocolate bundt cakes, and scoops of Brahms' premium vanilla ice cream, topped with more fudge and showered with toasted almonds. This Sunday is a chocolate lover's delight with whipped cream and a cherry on top. For a dessert that's irresistible, try Brahms' Molten Lava Cake Sundae.
Hello and welcome, football fans, to the 2024 Skordle preseason show. We are about a week and a half away from week 0 football in the state of Oklahoma, and we at Skordle are very excited to bring you another season. We have the voices of Skordle, Tom Nelson and Mark Rodgers. You'll be hearing from them, calling all of our games of the week. We also have our returning guest tonight, Bill Haisten of the Tulsa World. We had Bill on a year ago for this same preseason pick'em show, and are thrilled he agreed to join us again here tonight.
Sounds like it's a good thing I'm 50 miles away from you.
That's exactly right. Hey, Mark, before we get started making picks, there are a lot of changes to Oklahoma high school football this year that some fans may not be aware of. Can you talk about those changes and what differences fans will see throughout the regular season and the playoffs?
Well, they divided classes 2A, A, and B into 2 divisions, and I think that's a good move. I think that some of the difference between programs, the top of those classes and the bottom, are pretty significant. The largest classification in the state has only 16 teams in it. I just played a little golf tonight in a scramble. I've never heard somebody from the D flight said, man, I wish we were combined with the C flight. So it allows more people to participate, and so I think that will be a good thing.
We're going to preview each class tonight, and I'll ask our panelists to give their picks on who's going to win a gold ball, other teams that may compete for that gold ball, and a storyline or player that they'll be following throughout the season. We'll start at the top and work our way all the way down. So Class 6A1, Bixby took down Jinx 49-21 for its 6th consecutive state championship for Coach Montgomery's program. Bill Haisten, kick us off with 6A1.
Well, I wrote for our preview that is published this Sunday, right? I wrote a pretty comprehensive piece on Shaker Reisig, who I really had never sat down and interviewed Shaker until a few days ago. And like I wrote, he's the best high school quarterback I've ever covered, bar none. The second best would be a kid from El Reno in the 80s named Bucky Hill. I don't know, Mark, you're probably a little too young to remember Bucky Hill, but so, and as much as I think of Shaker and the Union program and all the pieces they have, I'm picking Bixby to win it again because strangely enough, because of their quarterback, honestly, and of course because of Lauren Montgomery. But I think Carson Kirby is the ultimate gamer. He's got a year under his belt now. He's just a junior, and great in the run game. He's become a more polished passer. He's like a 30-year-old guy out there on the field with regard to IQ and being, an extension of the staff out on the field. And I'll tell you what, the secret sauce at Bixby, Mark knows this, this is Lauren Montgomery's 15th season, right, at Bixby. He's had the same offensive coordinator now for 14 seasons and the same defensive guy for 13 seasons. That's unbelievable continuity. And so, the combination of that staff with a proven quarterback, even though they're in a rebuild mode to some extent, they were 2 years ago and outscored everybody by 550 points. So I think it's business as usual for Bixby, but I sure hope we have Shaker versus Bixby in the finals. Shaker's never played against Bixby ever. So that would be a heck of a way to wrap it up in December. But Jinx is really good too.
Mark?
It's the core strength at Bixby. It's that strength and conditioning program that they break the mold, because normally you handicap this by saying, well, all right, at Jinx, they've got 18 returning starters and a returning quarterback and a great tailback and all the things that Jinx does have. But at Bixby, they have very few returning starters, but it doesn't matter because they kind of reload with the guys that are coming in. That program is so good from top to bottom. I think you got to go with Bixby. I think after that, Union, I think, does need to potentially step it up a little bit. They've had really good talent, but they haven't made the championship game the past few years. I think Jinx is good. I think Owaso's a year away. There's a lot of talent there. They're probably a step below at quarterback from the other big three in the Tulsa area. There's another good big four in Oklahoma City. I think when you go, they're a step below those four, but I think when you go Norman North, Deer Creek, Santa Fe, and Mustang, those schools are going to be really good. Norman North has had a couple of guys move in, and so I think they're probably the best of that group. Carson Delgado, at quarterback at Edmond Santa Fe, is a freshman that's going to be a really interesting kid to watch. I mean, he's really, really highly touted for his class, getting a chance to play there. But I think those are going to be some good battles between those foursomes on either side of the state.
I was just going to say real quick, Delgado, was at Union for a year, and he was going to be their next guy, the quarterback future, and he went back to Santa Fe. And, when Shaker got hurt last year, Delgado as a ninth grader was 4-0. So, you're right about Santa Fe being a wild card for sure.
Tom, finish this up.
I'm not going to disagree with Bixby, that decade of dominance, 9 of 10 state championships going back to their time in 6A too. Just solid across the board. You always look, the offensive line, in the trenches is so important. And Bixby has Broderick Scholl, who's going to play at Auburn next year in the SEC. The East Side is going to continue to set the tone. Of course, Shaker Rydge mentioned, I saw him play when he was a freshman over at Jinx, and boy, he impressed me back then. Of course, Enid can make quarterbacks look pretty good, but I'd love to get a chance to see him play his senior year. He's going on to Boston College next year. Jinx is going to be in that mix. On the west side, I think Norman North and Deer Creek, they both have D1 caliber quarterbacks this year. So I think Bixby's your champ, and then I'll throw a dark horse in there each time on here. I think Norman North is the dark horse just because they're the best team coming out of the West, I think.
That's 6A1. Let's move on to 6A2.
Andy, before we go any further, I'm a little worried about you. If this is a video game, I would think you're about to fade out. It might be all over. I mean, a little dark there. I don't know if there's any lights or if that really is, if you might just be fading into oblivion.
I have some poor lighting going on. I just texted Adam. This is my Jordan.
Okay, good. All right, good. Okay.
So,
no, it's not.
Lighting. All right. 6A2. Stillwater narrowly missed out on their second consecutive gold ball as Coach Hill's Muskogee Ruffers defeated the Pioneers 28-26 in last year's state championship game. Mike Rodgers, tell us about 6A2.
I think that it's, repeat is the theme so far. Muskogee is really good. PJ Wallace, who was at Bartlesville last year, transferred to Muskogee as a running back there. They're good on the line. They got Bird Ficklin at quarterback, and he's incredible. They're going to be really difficult to beat. I think the team that can challenge them perhaps the most in that class is Choctaw. Sand Springs has a good quarterback in Easton Webb, who won the state championship in baseball on the mound for the Sandites. As far as a team in this class that could be a little bit of a surprise, Putnam City North might be a team that could jump up in the playoffs here in Oklahoma City. They've had some additions to that squad. I don't think they can challenge for the state championship. Stillwater's always good. They're solid, but I'm going to go with Muskogee to repeat.
Bill Haisten.
I finally got a look at the new facilities in Muskogee, Mark. And they're unbelievable. And the arena is crazy. But with regard to football, the stadium opened last year. Their strength and conditioning space is amazing. And so, for a few years they had a hard time getting athletes to come play football. And now they've got all this eye candy and great facilities, and they had Travis Hill, who's just an absolute stud. So, and Bird Ficklin, like you say, is a great player. I saw him lead Muskogee back in a fourth quarter comeback at Sand Springs 2 years ago. Unbelievable comeback. It was like watching Michael Vick run around. So, I just feel like Travis Hill knows how to coach in November, December. He's got a great cast of characters. And they've got guys playing football now who haven't been playing football in recent years, and they're really trending in a good way with great facilities.
Tom?
Not a lot of disagreement. Muskogee, defending state champ, got a lot returning. They're the team to beat. That PJ Wallace transferred in from Bartlesville, like Mark said, averaged 143 yards a game rushing last year for Bartlesville. You can imagine what he'll do behind a more talented offensive line. Stillwater's got a lot coming back. They'll be good. Mason Schubert throws to Deacon Jones, and that'll be fun to watch this year. I'm going with Muskogee. My dark horse is Piedmont. They're going to be really good, moving up from Class 5A with a lot of firepower back. So watch out for Piedmont.
Well, let's talk about 5A. Coach Mike Dunn's Carl Albert team won yet another gold ball last year with a 35-14 defeat over a really good Del City team. OU quarterback commit Kevin Sperry transferred to Denton Geyer after leading that Titan team to the gold ball last season. Mark, is Carl Albert still the favorite despite losing their quarterback?
They are the favorite, and they're the favorite by a bigger margin than they were last year. This team is really good. I think that the fact that the rest of the class has dropped off a little bit, Guthrie won't have the suffocating defense that they had a year ago, and I don't think Del City is going to be quite as good. I know that Rodney Fields, Bill can probably talk about this. Rodney Fields was so good last year at Del City. He may even get on the field as a true freshman at Oklahoma State. Daniel Newton is going to be the quarterback. He was a quarterback last year at Santa Fe. He's committed to the Air Force Academy. So they've got a quarterback that can step in for Kevin Sperry, and then 5 OU commits on the team, good young players. It's an embarrassment of riches at Carl Albert. I think that not only will they win the class, but they'll go undefeated.
Tom?
Yeah, Carl Albert's the Bixby of 5A, 7 state titles in 8 years. Got a 26-game winning streak going into this season. They've got the goods. They're going to do. I think they'll do it again. 3 Titans, as Mark was alluding to, going to OU next year, and I don't think anybody in 5A can touch them. Carl Albert is my champ. My dark horse, Lawton Mack, a lot coming back from last year's 8-3 team down in the southwest part of the state.
Bill, finish this up.
It's interesting. I'm always impressed when a team very, very clearly gets better as the season goes on. And I remember watching Carl Albert, I think 2 years ago at the Trojan Preview scrimmage in Jinx, and they weren't very good. They weren't. That night, they were not very good. And I thought, wow, okay, Carl Albert is taking a big step back. And then, 100 days later, they're dominating everybody. So, no, you guys are right. The combination of their personnel and their system, Carl Albert wins it again.
Hey, Bill, I did read your article on this website on Booker T. You were there. New coach.
Oh, right.
Woodson.
I should have mentioned Booker T.
So I know that they were really down last year, but that's a group that I think is probably now on 5A got a chance to do some damage.
It's yeah. I mean, it's like the last couple of years, Mark, once they got at or beyond mid-season injuries or whatever, academic issues, whatever, they would be down under 40 players, right? Trying to compete in 6A2, and now they're back in 5A, really where they belong with regard to facilities and enrollment. And they got like 55 players out. They got a new coach, Dan Bitson, who has breathed fresh energy into that program. I was at a practice the other day and couldn't believe the spirit there that I really hadn't sensed in several years. And they do have athletes, and they have the best down lineman, if not in the state already. He will be an SEC level recruit, Joseph Graves at nose tackle. He's unblockable. But Booker T is probably not a semifinalist level team yet, but they're trending in a great way, and they're back in 5A where they belong. They'll be fun to watch again for sure.
All right, Mark, I made it through 3 classes.
You're good. And you're looking a little brighter. You got more color,
Let's go to Class 4A. Coach Jeff Craig, a favorite of the show, so we were thrilled to see Blanchard, his Lions team, win a gold ball last season. Wagner, an incredible program, as everyone knows, and just narrowly missed its 7th football championship last season. Tom Nelson, who gets it done in 4A this year?
No, Wagner, they were the runner-up a year ago. They've won 6 state championships since 2011. They've reloaded. Alexander Shield Knight holds the school record for career sacks going into his senior year. He's a stud. Tuttle took advantage of the transfer rules. A really good team last year, got better. And one of the best players, receivers in the state, C.J. Simon, who transferred into Tuttle from Moore. But I think Wagner gets it done as the champ. My dark horse is Weatherford. They got C.J. Nixon. I think that, watch out for them this year.
Mark?
This is going to be a great class. I was at Tuttle on Saturday for their scrimmage. Cruz Campbell, last year's quarterback at Southmore, is really elevated Tuttle's game. Last year, Blanchard was so good on defense. They came up with big turnovers throughout the playoffs and special teams plays to help them win. And they didn't. They scored all defensive touchdowns in the Tuttle game when they won that last year. So I think I think Wagner's really good. I think Tuttle is really good. I think Elgin is really good. Ritzenmeyer is a fantastic player there. They've got an offensive lineman that's a high D1 recruit at Elgin. And then Blanchard is really good. They've had a little bit of injuries there. So I think there's 4 teams here. I'll give you a little bit of a dark horse. When you got some spare time, go check out my man Brandon Tyler's record as a coach. Like 230 or something like that all time. He's at Sallisaw now. It's his 3rd Sequoia County school to coach at, and they won 10 games last year, and I think that they can win about that level now. But this class is a bloodbath. 8 is good. Clinton's typically good. People in Western Oklahoma tell me Elk City is going to win that district in 4A1, so I could talk a lot about 4A, but this is going to be a fun class to watch.
Bill Haisten.
I know that Coach Condit and Wagner is going to be sick if because they have a really special group right now of kids. And Kel Charbonneau is one of my favorite high school players in a long time. Like I referred to Carson Kirby as being like an ultimate gamer type, and Kel Charbonneau is exactly that. And so mid-season, it's another great example of getting better in season and how coaching does matter. Wagner loses 42-0 at Cushing mid-season 2 years ago. And since then, they're 21-1. Well, the one was Blanchard. And Wagner had a horrible night, self-destructed, turnovers and penalties. And so, to say, okay, Wagner's on a mission, which they are, but just being on a mission, like Mark says, the depth of this class, just being on a mission isn't enough. But I'll probably go ahead and pick Wagner because of Dale's track record and because of Kel Charbonneau. But Mark's right. Any of about 5 teams could win this class.
Brandon Tyler at Southall have been on the show a lot as well. So shout out to Coach Tyler. Let's move on to Class 3A, mostly dominated by private schools yet again last year. Lincoln Christian winning that state championship 48-28 over Heritage Hall. Mark Rodgers, can a public school challenge for the gold ball in 2024?
Yes, they can. They absolutely can. Lincoln will have an advantage in this class in numbers. Even if you look at Heritage Hall, I know that they have some really good numbers in their lower classes. Lincoln lost a couple of transfers to Jinx. They're going to be really good again. Sulphur has a good team, and a lot of the coaches I talked to in Class 3A think that this is the year the Bulldogs can jump up there and try to compete. They played pretty well last year against Heritage Hall in the playoffs, and they've got almost everyone back, where Lincoln's rebuilding a tad, Heritage Hall is rebuilding a little bit, and week one is a great week in this class because you got Lincoln and Heritage Hall playing the regular season, and you got Sulphur and Washington playing. Sulphur's trying to break the Washington 30-game winning streak. Pauls Valley is also really good, but they're low on numbers, as are some of these other 3A teams. You look at Pauls Valley and Caleb Knighton. For them, he's got fantastic speed. He's going to Baylor. He played at Wynnewood last year, and I don't think a lot of people have seen him, but he could have a breakout season for Pauls Valley, who have a bunch of players back too. So Lincoln is my pick. Sulphur is my runner-up. I wouldn't be surprised if Sulphur had a chance to break through and get it done this year.
Bill.
Mark, have you been to Lincoln's campus?
I have not been. Nelson tells me it's a pretty nice place.
It is. Yeah, their facility. Dennis Bird, they got Dennis Bird's name on the football field. And it's like, I'm not sure if it's impressive or unhealthy, some of the facilities that you have up in the Tulsa County area. But man, Lincoln's facilities are right there. I would pick, it's silly for me to pretend to have a good feel for all the personnel and the teams on the west side. But it is a deep class like 4A, but I read some Barry Lewis spent some time at Lincoln during spring football, and what he came out of there with convinced me that they're ready to make another title run. Just because I don't know enough to make an educated pick, I'll just say Lincoln, because they have a machine over there and they have unbelievable facilities, and I love their coach.
Going back in the history a little bit, a public school hasn't won the 3A title since John Marshall in 2017. Like we said, Lincoln won it last year. They're second in 5 years, beat Heritage Hall in the final. The Hall's won 3 times. They've been runner-up 4 more times in the last decade. Like was mentioned, big game coming up in 2 weeks. So I guess it's week 1 after 0 week when Lincoln goes to Oklahoma City and takes on Heritage Hall. This is a tough one to pick. I'm going Lincoln 2, and I'll say they'll beat Heritage Hall in the final. I like Idabel also down there. They're my dark horse. Matrell Lopez on his way to OSU. Be paying attention, long way from Enid, but down there in the southeast in Idabel, see what they do.
All right, let's go to Class 2A1. Washington Warriors, 2-time defending state champions in 2A. Both wins coming at the expense of the Millwood Falcons in the state championship game. Those 2 teams are both in 2A1 this season, along with several other big-name teams. Should be a great class. Tom Nelson starts off.
Now, Washington looking for the 3-peat. And if you remember last year, I wasn't going to pick against them, and I didn't. And I won't again this year. I think I picked against them one time 2 years ago and realized that wasn't a good pick. 30-game winning streak, big-time players, great coaching, a great culture, and not to mention their biggest challenge has been Millwood, who's had some holes to fill this year. Millwood and Jones are going to be fun to watch at the top of District 2. Washington, I think they'll win again. My dark horse from over on the east side, Sequoia Tahlequah, got a good quarterback, Jalen Handel. So we'll be keeping an eye on them too.
By the way, Adam Dieselhorst just told me that the Skordle game of the week 1, is a 2A1 showdown between Jones and Kiefer. So it should be a great matchup there. Mark Rodgers, go to you, 2A1.
Looking forward to being at Kiefer. This will be my first time to call a game there. So I think I'm over the 100 stadium mark on calling games different places. So that's going to be another one to add to the list. Washington and Millwood is going to be a good battle. Marlowe is very good. Metro is good. Jones is good. And Jones has got some really good underclassmen that are joining their group that have been kind of playing great in Eastern Oklahoma, small fry leagues and everything like that. So I don't know. I mean, it could easily be Washington and Millwood again. Washington's replacing a quarterback. Millwood has theirs back, CJ Turnbull. Millwood's got just an incredible defense. I love Chris Carter, their middle linebacker. Made 1,000 tackles in the championship game 2 years ago as a sophomore. So I think it's going to be Washington, but Millwood may be closer this year than they were a year ago.
Bill.
So how did Kiefer get beat last year, Mark? Was it a kickoff return?
It was a kickoff return with 12 seconds left.
Right.
Yes. Jaden Nickens, who's now at Sierra Canyon with LeBron.
Just brutal. You know what? They've developed into a legit little football school, though. And I do remember I spent some time in their program a year ago. I remember they had some really good young players. So they've got some guys back, but the little bit of research I did on this class, I was like, holy cow, Washington. That was, in fact, of all the picks I had to make for our preview coming out this weekend, that was the first one I wrote down was Washington in this class.
For more than 100 years, Oklahoma Career Tech has been training skilled and dedicated individuals, giving clear career paths to over 90,000 graduates a year. These individuals are the heartbeat of the Oklahoma workforce, serving thousands of companies, fueling this state's economy. Oklahoma is powered by Career Tech.
Well, let's go to 2A2. There has to be a lot of coaches in this group that are excited they're not traveling to Washington or Millwood in the first couple weeks of the playoffs. But still, some really good teams here. It'll be a fun class for Skordle to cover. Mark, let's start with you. Who do you have winning 2A2?
This is a pretty tough one. You got some good quarterbacks in this class. Seneca Steele at Kansas is a good player. Meeker has a very, very good quarterback that can that can divine and change games for them. So I would say that the Davis Wolves are the favorite. Bayern is right there on their wheels. At Little Kansas could have a good season, but it's so new that these teams would be probably somewhere in the 6 to 8 range if we just had one 2A class. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in these smaller Class A and Class 2A Division twos. So it's wide open, but Davis and Bayern would be my pick for the finals. And if you want me to give you a little bit of a sleeper team, I'll go with Meeker.
All right, Tom Nelson, finish us up on 2A2.
Like Mark was saying, this looks to be about as wide open as it gets. Only 3 10-win teams from last year were shuffled into this new division. It's going to be competitive. Nobody in District 4 had less than 5 losses last year. Vian with the best record, 8-5. Davis, Colcord, Kansas, Vian, they're all going to be in the mix. And I'm going to totally go off the board. This is maybe a bit of a homer pick just because it's in the area. I'm going with Alva. They got a lot of talent coming back. They got a new coach, Ryan Wilson, but they're going to be a fun watch. So I'm going to go ahead because nobody really jumped out at me. I'm going to go with the Gold Bugs. My dark horse is Beggs, 4-7 a year ago. Got a new coach. Got some.
Right.
Still have talent. They're not in Marks Magazine's top 10, so I think that's a pretty good pick for a dark horse there.
Hey, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be. I promise you that. No, I like Alva too. I think Alva's they've got some good players, and that they were good last year and went on the road and had a nice run in the playoffs a year ago. So that's a good pick, Tom. And I think your dark horse pick is more than a little bit of a dark horse.
All right, let's go to Class A1. Fairview, 2-time defending state champion after a dominating 34-8 win over Hooker a season ago. Coach Bernard's son, Jax, back at quarterback for another year. Tom, does Fairview win it again, or does Tulsa's Rejoice Christians take the gold ball?
I think it's going to be the Jackets. They're the big daddy in A1, back-to-back state titles, 30-game winning streak. We've watched Jax Bernard grow up into one of the state's best quarterbacks playing for his dad. They beat Hooker twice last year, including in the state title game. And I think with what both teams have coming back, it's going to be a multi-game collision course again for Fairview and Hooker. And in the championship game, I'll go Fairview again. My dark horse is Pawhuska, moving down from 2A. They went 6-5 a year ago. They're going to regain their status. They're going to be a Class A beast again. Now they're back where they belong.
Coach Hennessy always can get it done up there. Mark, let's go to you.
If it's a powerlifting contest between coaches, I'm going with Pawhuska. I'm going with Matt Hennessy. He's going to win that for sure. Fairview's a team to beat. Hooker is really good, but they've got to get over the hump mentally of playing Fairview. They have a lot of returning players. I'll give you a team that I think that can contend and might find themselves in the championship game. That's Pecola. They've been great in basketball. They've got some of those basketball players out for football that are getting some Division I attention. And so I think that Pecola will be a team on the east side of the state that can make some noise coming through this group. And Rejoice will be really good. Rejoice will be a fun team to watch.
Bill, you cover so much with Tulsa World. You can get a big chance to see a lot of these smaller schools. But any thoughts on A1?
Well, I mean, Pawhuska, you nailed it. I mean, they're kind of back in their weight class. So, and that was going to be exactly my line, is they would be a dark horse. But Fairview, I mean, you're living the dream when you have a coach's son quarterback who's a veteran of a championship season. And that which means he's been groomed to do this since he was 2 years old. So I totally, and if you've got that kind of psychological advantage over, a district rival, that you can beat them by 3 touchdowns in the championship game. I love Fairview to win it again.
Before you move on real quick, week 1, Fairview at Alva. That's going to be a heck of a ball game.
Great game.
Alva's going to have to, I mean, that'll be a great test for Alva just to see how much they've made up, because Fairview's handled them real easy 2 years ago, fairly easy last year. We'll see if it's a close game.
Yep.
All right, quick trivia question for you guys. Can anyone tell me the last team to win a Class A state championship that will be playing A2 football next year?
Ringling.
Ringling's correct. 2019 gold ball
I
over.
didn't even get to reach for my buzzer. That was so fast.
Tom nailed it. Must have had my outline. Since then, it's all been Cashion and Fairview in Class A, and they're both Class A1. So who wins the first state title in A2, Tom Nelson?
Yeah, it's the smaller of the two Class A districts, a wide open field, teams that have been shut out from the top spot by those teams now in A2, like you were saying. Hominy made it to the semifinals last year, lost to Hooker. I think they're the team to beat in A2, Blaine Hipp to Elijah Hughes. Dangerous combination for the Bucks. I think Hominy is going to win their first gold ball since 2016. My dark horse, and Bill mentioned him a second ago, Regent Prep, as they move up from 8-man, we're going to see it. And I saw them when they got beat in the state semis, their last 8-man game at Cashion last year by OBA. But can that high-octane offense make that move without missing a beat? We'll find out.
Mark.
I think Hominy is the pick. I know Woodland and Hominy have a great rivalry. Woodland is also in the mix. And I think Bill was talking about John Mark Roller, the quarterback there at Regent, that is an elite player. So, he's got maybe the capability of leading Regent. Elma is a great team from Class B that played in the finals a year ago. And Slade Strickland, a really good quarterback for them. Their numbers aren't quite necessarily where they need to be, but they don't have to compete against teams that have larger numbers, say in the Division I here. So more wide open than 2A and in Class A2. So Apache is another good team. This is going to be a fun one to watch. I know Central Salisaw was also in the VIPE top 10 at number 3. So I think Hominy's a team to beat. That's who I'd go with.
Go to Bill.
So Mark, because you might one day be at a microphone for one of their games. For years, I've been aware of this family because the mom was a really good golfer at TU, and the older sister is a great golfer at TU now. But John Mark's last name is Roller, not
Roller. Okay.
I had no idea. In fact, I like mispronounced it in front of the mom even, and she said, "No, we're Roller, not Roller." But John Mark Roller he has like big time arm talent. If he had a little more size, obviously he'd have more doors opening up to him. I can't wait to watch those guys play 11-man football. But Hominy they're like the Baltimore Ravens of that class. And I'm not referring to the uniform color. I'm referring to just the kind of the culture and the defensive toughness. And because once again, I don't know a lot about the West Side, but I know Hominy, and I've been to Hominy, and it's a big time defensive culture, and I'll pick Hominy to win that class.
Last year when I did that Regent playoff game, that was the first thing Coach told me. He goes, "It's Roller."
Right.
And I'm glad. I appreciate that. We love that. That's good stuff, because I would have called him Roller.
In our business and at our firm, it's all about preparation, preparation, preparation. We are advocates for our client. We speak for them. So as a part of that advocacy, it involves hiring the best experts. It's doing the legal research. It's doing the medical research. That is advocacy behind the scenes. It's not just the bells and whistles in front of the jury.
All right, wrapped up 11-man, so let's move to 8-man football. Wildcats had a dominant 48-16 win over Velma Alma last year. Coach Manuel done a tremendous job with that program over at Sealing. They're actually Class B2, which we will discuss in a moment. B1 has some traditional powers like Laverne and Shattuck and Turpin and Dewar and others. Tom Nelson, you're our 8-man expert. Let's start with you.
Well, this is the lone situation where the larger of the split classes doesn't have a state champ returning. Sealing was shuffled to B2. Laverne has to be the favorite. They're the last team in the class to win a title, going back-to-back in 21 and 22. They're 36-3 since COVID. Dewar is going to be really good. They've got an outstanding sophomore quarterback. His name is Peyton Kilhofer. And Garber, just down the road from me. They return a ton of talent, a lot of skill position talent. Coach Coy Hughes, a friend of mine, thinks they can beat anybody, but he's going to not like me for this. I'm going with Laverne. And my dark horse is Turpin, because, I mean, their quarterback and the running back, Carson Peters, Jet Huffman, may be the two best
best quarterback and best running back in the class, and they're playing for Turpin. So Turpin's my dark horse there.
Mark.
Felix Teal is back for Laverne this year after being hurt a year ago, and he's a great player. He's incredibly fast, and he can kind of dominate the game. Adam and I got to go to Dewar last year for a game. We did the Dewar-Velma game in the regular season. That was awesome. They took great care of us. Awesome hospitality and great environment there for 8-man. And I did see Peyton Killhofer play. He's going to just be a sophomore this year. He's good. He's a good player. And Garber is kind of interesting to me because can they break out of kind of being middle of the road to an elite type status team? Yale has a lot of returning players from a year ago, but they're moving up. So I would say that not necessarily moving up, but this is to compete against the Lavernes and Dewars of the world. That'll be a step up for Yale. I'm going to go with Laverne also in this class.
Bill,
where is Laverne?
Harper County. Tom knows. Tom has been there. Tom can tell you to get there by the street, street address.
What county is it?
Harper.
Yeah, to get
where is that?
You jump on that Cimarron Turnpike,
Uh-huh.
go straight west, keep going past Enid, keep going past the Fairview turnoff, keep going past Woodward, hang a right, go out into the Panhandle, hang another right, and they have a tremendous concession stand, and they take care of their media
That's
out there
awesome.
too.
So basically, go to the Mountain Time Zone, take a right.
Almost, yes.
Is the Tigers Den still open there?
All I know is when I showed up out there, they rolled out. They almost, they brought me like 3 different things to eat before the ball game, and I'm not a before the broadcast eater. So then they just brought me the same stuff afterwards. So I didn't even eat the first round. And great hospitality. And keeping in mind when I'm doing that, I was the visiting radio guy when Pond Creek Hunter went out there. So they treat the visitors as good as anybody.
All right, let's go to B2. We mentioned Sealing will be in B2 this season, along with O'Keene and Pond Creek and Cub Dug and Oklahoma Bible Academy, others. Tom, educate us.
Well, Sealing hoisted that gold ball in Class B last year. They're going to be a tough out in B2. They've got some good skill position players to replace, but they could dominate in the trenches with what they have coming back on the line. Brian Smith at Covington Douglas has a lot coming back from an 8-3 team a year ago. His son's the quarterback. Walitka and O'Keene are going to be in the mix as well. I don't think you can go against Sealing. I think they're going to win again. And my dark horse, and kind of hard to believe you call Shattuck a dark horse, but I was looking, Marks Magazine picked them 4th in District 1, and I bet they'll be there in the semis when Thanksgiving rolls around. They don't have to worry about Laverne and some of those teams out west either, but so Sealing, my champ, and Shattuck, my dark horse, and I Cub Dug. I think they're going to be good. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Wildcats can do.
Mark.
I tried to get some information from Coach Garrison, the new coach at Shattuck, and he was being kind of quiet. And so when that happens, you know that they probably got a pretty good team when they don't want to tell anybody about how good that they might be. Sealing has Rush Hunt, Al Hunt's son. Was a national champion quarterback at Northwestern. I do like Walitka quite a bit. The Drake twins brothers are good players. Isaac Drake is an outstanding quarterback in that class, so I wouldn't rule them out. Ford Smith's really good as a quarterback at Covington Douglas, and the Shelburne brothers are all still at Wilson. But I don't know how much else that they had around. If it was 7-on-7, I wouldn't bet against those guys. They're incredible. So this is a good class. And so 1 through 5, I think Sealing has got the target on his back. Can Walitka, Covington, O'Keene, or Wilson make a run at them? I think it's possible this year. So Sealing's still the team to beat, but I think that the other group has definitely gained.
You might need to give a lot of directions to Bill here where those schools are. Bill, let's go to you.
I got no clue, but I'm just wondering, is there really a great difference? Like if you go 5A, 4A, 3A, there's obvious differences in 75-man roster, 58-guy roster, 40-guy roster. So, what is the basic difference in any of these 8-man classes? You know what I mean? None of them has like 30 players or something like that, right?
Some Some of them do 30
Really?
max. I mean, the class B schools do. It comes down to athletes. It comes to when you're 8-man football. There's three less players out there. Speed, is so important. So really, it comes down to who has the best athletes, and and that's what it is. And you look at the Lavernes that just win year after year, and Shaddocks and those teams. They just keep, they have a program just like anybody else, like Bixby or something like that. But the thing is, what gets me is even when Laverne, they might have an injury or two, like Felix Teal, they still make a run to the state championship game. I mean, so it's not really much different at the small schools as it is the big schools, just fewer bodies. But the want to is definitely there.
Right, right. But I mean, I just wonder, if it's just a razor thin difference between like most of the teams in the one Class B versus the other Class B.
Actually, what happens in 8-man football, I call a lot of 8-man football games, and I like to say the snowball can roll downhill in a hurry. And that's where you see, even in, maybe even a state championship game, you might see somebody beat somebody, 45 them, as we call it, might beat them 50-something to 6. It doesn't mean that team that lost is a real bad team. It's just, boy, one team is really, really good that night, and they just get the snowball rolling downhill. You see a lot more ball games in 8-man football that aren't close, even when good teams play. But when I tell you this, when you get a good, close 32 to 30 8-man football game coming down to the fourth quarter, there's nothing better. I'd say I enjoy calling 8-man better than I enjoy calling 11-man now.
Bill, I'm an 8-man neophyte, and Tom knows way more than me. But I tell you, one of the things that took me by surprise, and I couldn't really, I didn't understand, I didn't know until I saw it, is the kickoff. Is that you only have 7 men covering the kickoff, and so a kickoff, you can have a kickoff return in any game, and so there's a lot of strategy to the kickoff because with only 7 guys out there trying to cover, plus the kicker. Guys can get loose all the time and score. So it's like points aplenty all the time. And one more.
I don't mean to seem like an idiot, but I mean, I just in all my years in Tulsa, the only 8-man football I've ever covered was at Regent Prep because they're at 71st and 81st and Memorial, basically in South Tulsa, right? And I used to live like 2 stoplights away, and you go watch Regent Prep, and it's really, really, really good football. Plus, I think they got the best uniforms in Tulsa. I do. They're beautiful uniforms. But I just haven't been exposed to it that much. But I would catch myself, like you say, I mean, there's a ton of scoring, and there's unpredictability on special teams. And, I mean, everybody likes it's like watching it's like the difference between soccer on a regulation field and indoor soccer. I really enjoy the 8-man game. I just don't get to see it much.
Yeah,
that's a good comparison.
It's pretty cool also to see a 16 to 12, 12 to 8 8-man game where a couple.
Oh my Lord! Really,
down.
That would seem like
I did a
very rare.
Yeah, I did a game in Kansas one night where the game kicked off at 7:00. It was 45 to nothing. That I was out of there by 7:45 because it could not stop the other team, and every play was a touchdown. And they ended up spinning the second quarter because you got to play at least a half,
right?
Just sitting on the ball, and so you do get a lot of games like that in 8-man football. But boy, I tell you what, I love 8-man because first of all, it's kind of like from a broadcast point of view, it's almost like calling a basketball game. It's 8-on-8, so you can watch the individual things happen more like a basketball game than football. But you ought to get to a state championship game if you can this fall because you got
I need to.
8-man teams. It's something.
One more 8-man note before we go to Class C. Jeff Wigginton took the head coaching job at Caddo. He was I think the offensive coordinator at Sherman last year, and his son was a quarterback at Plano. So has experience at that level in the state of Texas and is a quarterback recruit for his class, which I think is 26. So it'll be interesting to see how the Caddo Bruins do in B1. There can be a team that can compete.
One more dumb guy question. Like, who's the greatest 8-man player in Oklahoma history? Who would that be?
There has been an 8-man player that played in the NFL, and of course, the kicker from Foyle, he was an 8-man player.
Josh Brown, was that his name?
He was an 8-man, which, let me tell you something, a good kicker in 8-man football that's a really good kicker because that rush is coming quick. You don't see many field goals
Right.
in 8-man football. But,
Two guys that stand out a lot. Ronell Lewis that played at OU was
Right.
good. And so was Reggie Skinner. He played at White Oak, which is a school that's not even in existence anymore. But those were both guys that got to play at OU.
Chris
Now
Penn.
played in the NFL.
Chris Penn was a really good wideout at TU 30
Lenapaw.
years ago. Where's he from, Mark?
Lenapaw.
Lenapaw, right. And he scored the winning touchdown against A&M.
That's good.
For Tulsa. Yeah, really good play.
How about the
And
kid-
played for the Chiefs a little bit.
I just got a text from Van Shea Ivan. He wanted me to mention his name too as a great 8-man player.
Huh? Is that right? Did he go to 8-man football school?
Hungry Gunner, state champion,
Oh.
1986, 85, 80, I believe.
Head coach Mark Welsh.
And
That's right. Doug Nelson on that team too.
no, I'll tell you something else. A lot of these 8-man players around here, around Enid area, they go and play in the KCAC up in Kansas. They play at a lot of them at Pond Creek Hunter go to Bethel. It's like these KCAC schools recruit a lot of these smaller 8-man schools around Eden. You'll see a lot of these players get a chance to play at the next level and get their education paid for by playing at these KCAC schools up across the border.
Hey, Tom, I bet you covered Brady Bond.
Yes, I did. As a matter of
Yeah,
fact,
there you go.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he just asked my knee. I have a bad knee, which everybody knows about except you. But he asked my physical therapist to marry him here just last week. So there'll be a wedding coming up pretty soon. He's marrying Kayla Lovell, who was a stud basketball player at Wacomas and then went on and played basketball at Southwestern College up in Winfield, Kansas. Another one of those small school guys, girls going north of the border.
He was a really good player for Mike Gundy. First recruiting class, I still argue maybe Gundy's best recruiting class was his very first one. And it was ranked 64th in the country, but he got so much value from so many guys. And Brady Bond was in that class.
Yeah, he was. That was when Garber. I think they won back-to-back state championships, won basketball state championships. He was there as well. So yeah, yep. He's selling Farm Bureau insurance. Last I knew around, he's in. I think he lives in Garber still, but sells insurance.
Hey, Bill, if you ever want to watch 8-man football and not even leave your house, just tune to Skordle.tv. 8-man football you want.
Next
All
Thursday
free.
night. Next Thursday night.
What a tease.
Timberlake for Timberlake Cherokee. So
Who's on the call with you, Tom?
I do not know. That's above my pay grade. I show up and whoever sits next to me sits next to me. I might get the old ball coach Randy Turney. I'm not sure, but Brian Severin Stadium, who he'll be coaching in front of his own stadium there. They named it after him. He's had quite a career as the head coach at Timberlake, and their arch rival there in Alfalfa County is Cherokee. They used to be arch rivals. They don't play in the same class anymore, so they don't play as much. But they still don't like each other much. It'll be a good game.
Fair enough. We have our final class, Class C. Tipton won its second straight gold ball last year, 9th overall. Tom, can anyone dethrone the Tigers this season?
Well, I've got 3 teams that are head and shoulders above the rest. 2-time defending champ Tipton, the 2021 champ Timberlake, and I'm going to throw Ryan in that mix too. Tipton takes a 28-game winning streak into the season. They've got a few holes to fill. They lost a little bit, but I've got no doubt they're going to reload. They always do. But Timberlake and Ryan have most of their key players back. I'm going to get a chance to see next week Maverick Judd rush for over 1,000 yards as a sophomore for Timberlake. Cowboys have Carson Rodriguez, a tailback who went for over 1,300 yards, scored 22 touchdowns. So I'm going Timberlake. I think they'll win it for the first time since 2021. My dark horse is I'm going with Waynoka. Landon Seeger is one of the best ball carriers and linebackers in the class, and he's a stud for Waynoka, and I think they'll bounce back this year. We saw that. I remember they did their game last year when they hosted O'Keene and lost to O'Keene at home. But I think Waynoka is my dark horse. But, Bill, get yourself find somewhere to get to an 8-man football game between 2 good teams because I think you'll really enjoy it.
By the way, O'Keene, a new Skordle school, so shout out to the Whippets. Be on Skordle.tv this year. Mark Rodgers, go to you, Class C.
I think Tipton's going to repeat. I think they're going to be tough to beat again. Johnny Fernandez would have been my preseason player of the year in that class. He's 5'4", but he's really difficult to tackle. So big things come in small packages there for Tipton and Travis White. I mean, he's just got it rolling. But Tom has the same top 3 as I do. Mountain View Go-To is really good. We haven't mentioned them. I have them in the 4th spot with Winoka in the 5th spot. I think Medford can be a better team this year, and I think we can see some improvement from Granfield. And then 2 more things before we turn it over to Bill here. I do want to compliment the Tulsa World's prep coverage. It is fantastic. I mean, they're very fortunate to have a guy as talented as Bill who cares to cover it. Barry Lewis and the crew, and Barry's been doing it for a long time, but I really enjoy reading everybody's stuff in the world. It's off the charts good. We left off one 8-man guy that might be the most decorated. That's Dan Bailey, who kicked for the Cowboys. He played at Southwest Covenant. Not sure
he did
in the association. May have just been playing independent, but he was definitely an 8-man player.
Wow, I forgot about him. Where is Bowlegs?
Oh,
And what's their nickname?
Bowlegs Bison is on the highway between Seminole and Ada. You've got to go a little bit to the east, about 5-6 miles off of that 377, I think. But I lost my wallet there and had to go back and look for it after I was at the Tigers Den one night in college with some friends. So,
Bill, let me tell you what you would get. This is if you're out covering an 8-man football game, a playoff game, and you had to go to Graham Dustin. I followed Medford down there a few years ago, and they said, we'll put a pickup. We'll set up a pick. We don't have a press box. We'll set up a pickup for you. You can broadcast from the back of the pickup. Get there on a cold, cold night. I look at the pickup. It's at ground level. It's like, okay, this is not going to work. I made the choice. Only time I've ever done this. I broadcast this game on the radio with my cell phone and a headset, walking the visiting sidelines. Just walking the sidelines, calling the game. Great. Could interview the coach pretty much whenever I wanted. That's 8-man football right there. And Medford went down there and won the game, and it was a lot of fun.
I bet it was a great broadcast. I do. I bet you did a great job, and I bet you actually enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Andy's lost control of the show.
Different.
Hey, Bill, have you ever been to Haleyville?
No, I kind of know where it is, but no, I've never been down there.
Well, when Adam was at Cashin on the coaching staff there with Coach Shackelford, they said that that was the first round of the playoffs, and they auctioned off their press box as a deer stand. So somebody got the ability to go shoot deer from the press box. They also had a copperhead infestation at their field. So that was a pretty scary event.
Yeah, well, Coweta hosted McAllister 2 years ago when, oh my gosh, the great tailback from McAllister, who's at OU now, whose name escapes me. Oh my gosh, how could I forget?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they use so we go there for maximum coverage. It's like number 1 versus number 4 or whatever, and they use their press box as a luxury suite for the big timers in Coweta. So Barry Lewis and I sat outside and covered that game.
Okay, if you're going to do maximum coverage in your area, you've got to go to Blue Jacket sometime. I chased Pond Creek Hunter over to Blue Jacket one night. It was week 9 with the district championship on the line. They had a press box, but nobody used it. They ran the extension cord out of it, the score clock in it. We're all sitting in the stands. I'm sitting in the stands broadcasting the game with all the Blue Jacket fans sitting right around me, and Pond Creek Hunter beat them by 30, 40 points, and it was kind of uncomfortable to call that ball game. But I should have taken up the Coach Kerr at Pond Creek Hunter. They would have let me set up on top of the bus on the visiting side, but I was afraid I'd fall off the top of the bus, so I stayed in the stands on the home side. So that's 8-man football.
Mark, I don't have enough voice left to rein you guys back in.
Okay.
But I do want to ask any final thoughts from you guys regarding this season or anything else football related.
Eric McCarty, the player from McAllister.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, of course.
He's coming off an injury, so we'll see as his redshirt freshman. I loved him in high school. He's a good player.
Player.
I'm good, man. I think we might have to put a couple more quarters in the machine if we want to keep this going. But I'm looking forward to the season.
I would say up here, Jinx was the clear winner in the free agency movement during the offseason. Not only got the state 100 meters champion in 6A, Caleb Barnett, a wide receiver, who moved from Broken Arrow to Jinx. In fact, he moved over there, I believe, 2 days after he won the gold medal in the 100 meters for Broken Arrow. But also 2 really good brothers from Lincoln Christian, the Dillard brothers, Malachi and Caleb, each of whom has a Miami Hurricane offer already. They're also at Jinx now. So Jinx, in addition to some linemen and some other guys, so they really cleaned up on move-ins.
Okay, other than Lincoln, anybody else you can think of that's a big loser from that?
No.
That's good. I'm glad you can say that, because that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid that there'd be a bunch of losers, players bailing and losing.
No, just those 2. I mean, but they're really, really good.
Yeah,
really good players, both receivers and DBs.
And we're still picking Lincoln to win, so that just tells you how much talent there is there. I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on the Skordle preseason pick'em show, sponsored by Brahms, Oklahoma Career Tech, and Maples, Nix, and Diesahorst. You can catch all these free games on Skordle.tv throughout the season. Week 0 regular season games start next Thursday, August 29th, with Tom calling that game we talked about up in, is that in Cherokee, Tom?
It's at Timberlake. It'll be in Helena.
It's in Helena. So be sure to tune into that game and all the other Skordle games of the week throughout the season. See you then.